All right, we're back for another episode of the Body Beauty Show. And today I'm joined by a fabulous, delightful Canadian. She's my first Canadian in history to be on the show. It's about time we get some representation from the North Pole, where Nicole is, our guest today. So let's introduce her. Her name is Nicole Manion. She is the owner, CEO, president, head honch, queen bee, the one who orchestrates all things of Muskoka Beauty, Muskoka Aesthetics. She's a beauty biz entrepreneur. She's a bit of a hero in her own right. And I think by the end of the show, you'll agree with me on that point. So Nicole, thanks for being here. We're glad you are here. How is life? Talk to me.
Things are good. It's a little snowy here in Muskoka, Ontario, but we're all cozied in and we're doing great. Thanks.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm jealous. I'm a snowbird and or a snow guy. I guess it's the opposite of snowbird.
Snowbird.
And, yeah, you live where I would dream to swap you out and be. I guess Whistler is probably not that close to you, and Banff and all that rest of it. But skiing is amazing in Canada. I'm jealous. So anyway, enough of me. Let's talk about you. So as a starting point for the show, I think it's helpful for the listeners to know a bit about your backstory. So who you are, what you do, and how you landed where you are today. So if you want to share that high level, we can use that as a launch pad, and we'll get into the rest of it off the back of that.
Sounds great. Well, I'll kind of summarize in a nutshell because we could be here all day. So first of all, I was always a tomboy growing up, didn't really have any idea of where I was going to be as an adult and careers. And I feel like you're asked at such a young age, what are you going to be when you grow up? Or no one asks you what your passion is or what you really love to do. They're always asked, what are you going to be when you grow up? So I kind of took it slow, to be honest, when I got into the whole going to college, university thing. I suffered deeply from dyslexia, learning disability. I was really held back in going to school. I was always pushed into other classrooms with other kids that also suffered with learning disabilities, and having an IEP myself. It was just, let's get through school and see where this goes. And I was always around entrepreneurs. I'm a third generation entrepreneur in my dad's family. And I was like, okay, let's just get through high school. Let's get through all of this and then see where life takes us. And I've always been really competitive when it came to sports. I was always breaking records when it came to hurdles, track and field, volleyball. I was always in doing those type of things because I was good at them. But I never had another passion that really drove me to a career, because obviously I knew I wasn't going to be a professional athlete. So then I got asked to be in pageants. And for those who know me personally, I was, like I said, a tomboy. And I was like, well, let's see where this takes me. It's Northern Ontario was the pageant I was part of. And from there, I competed. I actually did hurdles on stage. That was my my talent.
By the way, not to interrupt you, but I have to here because the listeners have to understand. When you say pageant, listeners, she's referring to Miss Universe Canada. Let that sink in. This is not some sort of like your local dive bar is having a beauty pageant. This is the NBA of beauty pageants. So anyway, please continue on.
Yeah, so from Miss Northern Ontario, I was asked to compete at Miss Universe Canada, and I was 17 getting asked to compete. So I had just turned 18 when I started compete at national level here in Canada, and I had no idea what that meant. I was just like, okay. And I actually ended up being one of the youngest ever delegates for Miss Universe Canada at that age, probably because I look older than I am. That was probably part of it.
Not true.
Anyways,
go on.
And then from that point on, I got really involved with the beauty industry. I was looking around people. I got my eyelashes done while I was competing. I was getting my hair done, makeup. My mom is a hairdresser, but it's kind of funny. You're like, I don't want to get into what my parents do for a living. I was kind of like, I want to be a rebel and not listen and do something different.
Yeah.
So I took a couple years off from school and I tried real estate. I tried a couple different things that I thought I would get into. I got kind of my first phase in real estate, realized it wasn't for me. Did property maintenance, living up in Muskoka. We're kind of limited to a lot of education here. We have to travel in order to go to school. So I went about an hour south of where we are, and I went to a private school there. And with my learning disability, I always needed to make sure that the school was able to actually have me there, and they were able to work with me with my learning disability. So it was great because the dean of the school was able to actually sit down and explain their learning methods. And aesthetics is a trade, as we know, right? So it's amazing that we got to do the hands-on part of the business, as well as all the book side of things, learning how to how to like do your business plan as well as like how to deal with clients. And it's a lot of, you're basically learning to be a therapist as well. There's a lot of things that they teach us in aesthetic school.
Yeah.
So I ended up finishing my diploma program through Rinaldi School of Aesthetics, which is a private school, like I mentioned. And it was great. There was only 14 kids to a class and it was amazing. And then from there, I worked at another spa in town and I realized it was everything that I didn't want. It was just the atmosphere of the spa environment. I was like, there's so many things I would change. And I wanted to buy someone who was quite experienced in the industry, but as a young entrepreneur, like it's in my blood. I had no way of not being an entrepreneur. And I was kind of like one of those kids that probably told her how to run her business. And I ended up getting fired from that job. I've gotten fired from quite a few jobs. So I feel like I'm meant to be an entrepreneur.
Sure.
And from that point, I was like, I'm going to have to open up my own business. I think that's the only way I'm going to be happy in this industry. And so I opened up the doors to my very own spa at the age of 20. And it just kind of grew and grew and grew. And I then was like, I need a product line. I need something else with this business that comes hand in hand. And then that's how Muskoka Aesthetics and Muskoka Beauty became what they are today.
I don't think the listeners have fully grasped the last tail end of that story there fully and what it means. So let's back up, because you at 20, think about that. At 20 years old, I was probably still in diapers. And here you are launching spas, private label, beauty, brand, retail products, and the rest of it at 20. That's insanity. So obviously you have some sort of entrepreneurial spirit drive that's just a fire burning inside of you. But before we get into that, because there's a whole, drove of topics inside of that bit alone, I'm curious about the spa bit where you said, or when you said that you walked into these spas and realized, okay, this is wrong. This is wrong. This is stupid. I hate this. Why are they doing it like this, that, and the other way? What are some of the things that you saw these spas doing that were so obviously either idiotic, wrong, backwards, or wrong, let's say?
First of all, how staff was getting treated, how staff were being paid. I was a contract worker at that point, and coming right out of school, I had no clientele. And I would go into work, for example, on a Saturday, and I would do one eyebrow wax and get paid a commission off of that eyebrow wax after I had been there. And I'm just a hardworking person to begin with. So I'm there cleaning and keeping myself busy. And I was like, wow, I got paid $7 for being here all day. So there was a lot of things. That is one big example where I was like, this is not right. And just the atmosphere. I feel like a lot of people feel like there's this drama being a hairdresser, an esthetician, or that type of thing. And I was like, it doesn't need to be this way. We all need to be helping each other. We need to be referring each other. You don't have a ball and chain around your client's ankles, right? So they can go off to another spa if they want to, or just try your hardest to keep them where they are. And I found people were becoming malicious. They're being super protective over their clientele. There was a lot going on. And I'm like, this isn't what I want. I got into this industry for my clients. I got into this industry to help people, to make people feel beautiful on the inside and out. And I wasn't being able to achieve that because my energy wasn't there on my day-to-day at that specific place I was working. I know it might be different, obviously, in other spas, but that was just my first experience working in a spa industry. And I was like, I know I'm meant to be in this industry, but not at this specific location.
So staff issues. What else?
Yeah.
What else were spas doing that were completely wrong, backwards?
I would also say with product lines, like really doing the research. I feel like people are really quick just to bring in any line. And sometimes people look at the margins or they look at the money without really realizing why. Like a product will sell itself if it's good, right? And you shouldn't have to like really beg your clients to buy it. Once they try it or try a sample, they're going to be sold. So it's like really making sure that you're bringing in the right quality product for the right reasons and it'll sell itself. So I found, for example, my specific owner of that spa wasn't a full esthetician. So that was another thing where she didn't have the experience of why we needed a specific skincare line and why we weren't happy with one, or the wax we were using and why there was issues with clients and people saying things, and it was getting blamed on us when really it was a product we were using, right? You're only as good as your tools, as any trade person would know that, right? So that was definitely another struggle we had, was always making sure we were trying to find the best products, but then of course sometimes the best products cost a little bit more money.
Mm.
So it's the margins, trying to make the numbers work, the number game of it all. And then also I'm like a very different spa. How we run Muskoka Aesthetics is we're only open Monday to Friday to the public. That is like, people listening to this are probably like, are you crazy? So we are open Saturdays for weddings and events, but Mondays, a lot of spas are actually closed on Mondays, and Mondays is one of our busiest days, because other estheticians or other spa owners or people who work retail are wanting to come in on Mondays to be pampered. So, and everywhere else is closed. So I'm like figuring out these numbers and I'm like, who wouldn't want to work Monday to Friday? Like, I'm my own boss. I think everyone thought I was crazy, and probably still think I'm crazy, that we're on Monday to Friday spa. And working at some other spas, I was like, wow, I want to have my weekends. And everyone who works for me, all of their spouses work Monday to Friday. They're so much happier when they come into work. It's like the culture of the business. As long as your staff
Yeah.
are happy and their spouses are happy where you work, that makes a world of a difference.
It's true. How you treat your staff is a shorthand for how they're going to treat your customers. If you treat them poorly, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Absolutely. So it seems like one of the contrarian bets that you made was, I mean, you just said it, but changing your hours to where the industry norm is to do this. And you said, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to do something completely different. It was totally contrarian. And it paid off. And Mondays, from the sounds of it, have been one of your biggest days. Are there other things like that were contrarian in the sense that, the industry always says, or everyone's an advocate of doing it like this. And I said, it doesn't work for me. I'm going to do this 180. Bet-wise that you place with decisions you've made, products you've added, services that you've deployed or bolted on your menu, et cetera, that have produced outsized gains for you. I mean, is there anything else in the way of contrarian thought that you would share with the...
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely one of those people that I like to be different. I think people who know me on a personal level will probably say that. Or I like sometimes to do things out of the norm or sometimes people don't expect it. And I love hiring staff fresh out of school. I know a lot of people are all about experience, but personally being a young entrepreneur, and I wish I had someone who was a great mentor when I first came out of school, someone who held my hand a little bit through the industry and showed me the reins of what they don't actually teach you in school. And I have hired probably like 90% of my staff fresh out of school. And I love that. It helps me to mold them. It helps me to make sure they're not getting bad habits. I can train them with our specific lines and they're not getting confused with other ones. They are eager to learn. Like, I could just go on all day about why I hire people right out of school. And it's great because you can be a mentor for them. You can start them at like a reasonable rate, but then you can also give them incentives. So having sales incentives, having we do every 3 months we do assessments with them. So I'm really about like the business culture and really making sure everyone's in the right mind frame. Like you said, you got to be you got to be a good person inside in order to pursue the service for your client. Like, the energy you have to have that positive, useful energy about you in order for your clients to see that. And people can energy read that so much in the industry. And I just love taking these fresh out of school students and just help mold them. And then I love, like, people might think, well, it is sad when they go off and start their own careers, or they end up changing industries, or they're going to start families or starting their own businesses. But for me, I'm like, I did my job. I was their mentor. I was able to give them the best tools I possibly could from my experience to now get them to their next level. It's like I'm like the mother hen and they're leaving the nest. That's how I explain it. But it's just a huge part of why I do what I do. And I love doing that so much, of bringing students in. And then even with co-op students, that's another thing we love doing with our local high schools. Is I wish I did a co-op when I was in high school, because I think it would have excelled me a little bit more into the beauty industry at a younger age, even than 20. But I would have been a little bit more involved, I think, at a quicker age, and then really see what it was about. Because I think a lot of people from the outside looking in think the beauty industry is very catty and drama
Yeah.
filled, and it doesn't need to be like that. And that's
Yeah.
another huge message I love telling people getting into the industry or thinking about the industry is it's what you make of it, right? And like for me, I saw a problem at one of our other places, and I was like, let's change this. Let me build the community and the culture I want within my business, and then we just flourished from that point on.
Hmm. What do you wish was getting more attention in the industry that's not being talked about enough?
That's a great question. I feel like that's like a fully loaded question.
It might be by
There's
design. Exactly. She's on to
yeah,
me. She knows why I'm asking.
yeah. That's a good question. I think there's just so many things that people don't realize. Like for from the stance of an esthetician, let's say, is I don't think people realize how much we are people's therapists, how much we do put into our energy of our clients. And at the end of the day, there's not much left of us after working a
Mm,
12 to like 10 to 12-hour day, as most
yeah.
estheticians do work. And I think it's something of people listening to this, I think as a client, people need to ask how we're doing. Like really, like if you care so much about your esthetician too, it's like that, it's like a friendship, but then it's like the give. So even at my point of my business now is stepping back a little bit more from the service industry, I'm realizing like I need to take care of me. I'm preaching all of this to my clientele, but maybe I need to go for a massage. Maybe I need to go for some pampering as well. So I think one of the biggest things in the industry is I think estheticians think they need to have it all put together. They think, oh my gosh, she's a spa owner. She's got her hair done. She's got her nails done. She's got this done. But really, we're just like going through the motions and we're just trying to survive. And I think beauty, as like our podcast, right? Like beauty can mean so many different things to people. And like really being open to that conversation, whether you're a young entrepreneur or someone who's in sales or, I mean, the beauty industry can go anywhere. It's a billion-dollar industry. And I think people looking from the outside as well think you can't make money being an esthetician. You can't make money being a hairdresser. I think of friends that went to school that are still paying off student debt. And I went through a 6-month aesthetic program and now making, like you said, 6 figures. So it's one of those things where, yeah, it might not cost a lot of money to go to school. Yes, it's opening a spa, it's a service industry, it's a product industry, but there is money to be made and people need to be hungry to get it, right?
Mm,
So there is, and the industry is just growing. We're just starting, and especially with e-commerce now and online sales, we're just exploding. It's like the early stages of like the internet, right?
yeah.
And the e-commerce, people are getting into it now, right?
Lot to slice through there. Yeah, I think there's a ton of change. In fact, one of the changes I just saw this morning, now this is more in the lane that I swim in, being in body contouring, is I was looking at Google Trends this morning, and the search traffic in March of 2020, so about a year ago, when COVID hit, was at 14 on a scale of 0 to 100. And today it's at 100. So that's a 614 or whatever percent increase in search traffic, aka demand from the market, and what consumer preferences are pointing towards. And I would imagine that for facials, for anything aesthetics, Botox, injectables, microdermaplaning, excuse me, microblading, et cetera, that the demand is probably soaring as well. And that's obviously excluding all the bits that you mentioned, like e-comm and the rest of it, because obviously that's an entire beast in of itself. And what you've done, from the looks of it, at least outside looking in, is you've incorporated an online component with your website, because you have your own product line. So actually, let's segue, because I'm really curious about this, because I think there's a fairly significant opportunity for spa owners, estheticians, et cetera, that do not offer anything retail wise to bolt something on that is retail based to maybe even 2x their revenue as their clients, leave the practice after a treatment or whatever. So how did you go
Mhm,
about building out
mhm.
your product line? And then how did that evolve into now what it is where you offer that online? And maybe you can talk through some of the roadblocks that you overcame as you did that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's something, to be honest, I haven't spoke a lot about on different platforms is the whole private labeling, building a brand, because it's it's like where do you start, right? It's like it is a whole different business because it's a product line versus service. But to be honest, like when you're wanting to scale a business, especially when it's service industry. I mean, COVID, of course, we can't control the closures and the pandemic, but when it comes to a product line, it never sleeps. It's working nonstop. When I wake up in the morning, there's sales. I'm doing my everyday thing and I'm looking and there's money to be made, right? And there's money in the bank now because it's generating in the systems, right? So when it came to building Muskoka Beauty, our lash line, I saw a problem in the industry, especially here in Canada. We really struggled to find like quality lash products. And I mean, the States, everywhere else in the world, I feel like are so much more advanced than us here. And I was buying all these products and bringing them in and importing them from all over the place. And I was paying all these duties and taxes and all this crazy stuff. And even just the time of researching. And I'm like, okay, why don't I just make my own? Like, this is just ridiculous. And I'm like, what makes us different than anyone else creating this line? And to be honest, I thought it was just going to be our spa that was going to be using these products. And then I was like, hold on, no, why don't I sell these? If there is a need in Canada, why don't I sell these? And then I was kind of, you have your like social media friends, right? So I'm like messaging my friends in Manitoba and messaging my friends out east. And I'm like, okay, as spa owners, would you be interested in testing products? So I had staff at that time that we had about 4 or 5 lash techs, and my boyfriend had mentioned Alibaba, and I was like, okay, tell me more. So I went online and I'm like, oh my gosh, these are lash trays. Okay, this makes sense. So I just ordered a bunch of samples. I presented them to my staff. I mailed out a couple samples out to other people within Canada, and everyone was floored by the quality. And I was like, this is too easy. This can't be real. And then at that point, I noticed the quality and the consistency. So then you ordered more samples. I was like, oh, these are not the same as the first order I got. So it really took time to dial in on the specific companies you want to deal with, looking at all their analytics, and then figuring out your business name, your logo, your branding. That for me, I'm a very creative person. And I was like, that's my favorite part. I feel like I'm constantly like, oh, let's change this or let's brand this. And I looked at iPhones, to be honest, and I was like, every girl I know has a white rose gold iPhone with a marble case. And anyone listening who has that, you know, I'm on this.
Does that sound like you? Check her out online. She's got the thing for you.
So, and that's where kind of the branding all came together. And then my team, I was kind of like jumbling names, trying to figure out, I'm like, hey, now we're getting the line figured out, but I'm like, we need to name it. And personally, I was like, okay, Muskoka, I don't want to be Muskoka because Muskoka is dear to my heart. I was born and raised here. I absolutely love it. I was Miss Muskoka for multiple years. And I was like, well, beauty pageants is what got me into aesthetics. So why don't I call it Muskoka? Oh my God, that makes sense. It just kind of all rolled. And I was sitting there with my boyfriend. I remember we were bouncing names off each other. And then we're like, well, why don't we put beauty on the end? So at least then when people hear Muskoka, they don't think it's just like, or it autocorrects to Muskoka, Ontario. It will autocorrect to like a beauty something. And then that way it left it open if we wanted to grow more out of not just lash extensions. We wanted to grow into more of the full beauty line, or we wanted to get into any other direction in the beauty industry. So within the products and like scaling our line, it was, to be honest, once you find good companies to deal with, it just starts revolving. You really build up a good relationship with your buyers, your manufacturers. They're so cute. Like they'll send you like Happy New Year, Merry Christmas. You really get on that personal level after you've been a client with them for so long. And I just felt like the products sold themselves, like what we were talking about earlier. And it was just one of those things where I saw how much my clients, I didn't even tell my clients, to be honest. We experimented with all of my staff, the products on them. And then we started introducing them to our clients. And they're like, what are you doing different? My eyelashes feel so fluffy, or they feel so much lighter. And the application doesn't sting when I go to open my eyes. And even for me, I suffer really bad from allergies, which I always say I'm allergic to work because I think I'm allergic to everything that releases scent.
Yeah, sure.
So
sure.
even me personally, I'm still lashing. And I was like, wow, my allergies aren't bad. My sinuses don't hurt after a day of work. And I'm like, okay, we're on to something here. And I just shared my message to a lot of my friends, and then they started using it. And then the word just spread, right? Like it was just the positive it just all happened the way it was supposed to happen. And I feel like even with our line now, we're still growing, we're still scaling, we're still creating different products, even in the middle of a pandemic, because we have buyers in the States, we have buyers pretty much across the world now at this point. So it's just been a journey. It's been amazing, amazing journey.
How did you start? So you realized, okay, there's a gap. I can't find the product that I want. So I'll just create it. Okay, great. Now I've got an idea. Now, where does everyone in history ever that doesn't successfully execute on an idea fail? Well, it's with the execution of the idea. So you had the idea, came to you like a thief in the night, or I guess the opposite of that, a tooth fairy in the night. They give you the idea. Uh, and you decided, okay, I've got to do something with this. So you went to Alibaba and you got some samples, but at some point you had to go find manufacturers to help you create and formulate the new tincture that would evolve into what you
Mhm.
now sell. So how did you go from idea to clicking buy on Alibaba to now I'm creating and designing and architecting my own products and all the logistics inside of that? Because you had to find manufacturers, et cetera. How did you do that? How did you build that?
So to be so to be honest, all of our liquids are made in the UK. That was something I really wanted to take pride in, is being European grade. All of our boxing and our lashes are made in China. But it was one of those things where, to be honest, Google, Google was like my best friend when it came to really researching the companies, doing, oh my gosh, the amount of hours. And also they're in the opposite time zone as us. So I'd be up till 3 in the morning messaging them back and forth, doing price comparisons, figuring out quality. And even for us, like, we had to go with Canada too, we had to go through all the regulations and everything here as well, and insurance, and making sure we had our butt covered in all of those categories. But when we when I was like, we're gonna place our whole, because you get samples, right? They have no labels on them. They're just right from the manufacturer. And then once we figured out, like, okay, things are consistent, I've ordered multiple samples, I'm happy with the quality. Customer service, that's another thing. Really make sure that they're really good with their customer service. They're on top of, they're going to answer you, because there's some client or some businesses I've dealt with that 3 months goes by, you've paid them, and then you're like, oh, where's my product? And then they answer you back, oh, sorry, our systems were down or something. And those are the companies you don't want to deal with. Trust me, it's been a lot of time and money wasted in situations like that. So from experience, really dial in on the hot, you're going to pay a little bit more money usually for some of the higher end businesses, but it's going to pay off in the end. So I remember when we went through, we went on like Adobe Illustrator and all this stuff and started putting together the marble backgrounds, the logos. We wanted it to be like a rose gold foil and all these different things that I was like, I hope that the manufacturer can do this. And I spoke to them and they were able to make it all happen. They made the vision come true. So I remember placing our first like wholesale order, like a big order, which looks so small now. But I remember placing that and I was like, you know that TikTok song? It's like, please be pretty, please be pretty. And you go to open the package. And I was like, this is everything I wanted plus more. So it was just, my team and I loved it, because you spent so many hours on something that you just hope's going to turn out. And when you're placing a huge quantity order, your heart sinks a little bit, because you're like, oh gosh, I hope this turns out. And then when you actually get to hold that project in your hand, it's worth every second.
Wow. God, there's so much inside of that. E-comm is the future, and those spas that don't have um, retail on their website that's available to purchase day or night, like you said. In fact, here's the antidote for listeners that have anxiety about the next wave of lockdowns, which God forbid they actually happen. I hope they don't, obviously. But if you have anxiety about that, I would bet you my life that Nicole has almost zero anxiety about cash flow and revenue. And here's why. We look at her her Instagram page for Muskoka Aesthetics, and this is what the headline reads: temporarily closed to the public. And that's where most spas stop, right? But her headline beyond that says, but the online store's open, AKA I'm good. Cash flow is not a concern because I have people flooding to my online store and making purchases. And oh, by the way, I have the brand. I own the brand, so my margins are probably better than if you were, selling Revlon or whatever. that's exciting. So I think it's a hedge against the uncertainty of lockdowns, et cetera. And as we evolve and move into the future of, well, I'm not going to start speculating about the metaverse and virtual reality and like lack of social contact as we all evolve into being comfortable in our homes and never leaving and whatever. You have to have an online element. And if listeners are not looking into that, you should probably do that. And you should probably even consider creating and launching your own brand, your own product line. Because I'm assuming that for you, Nicole, this has been, I would imagine, maybe even a 2xer for your revenue, if not much more, and certainly has the capacity to be a 2,000xer based on revenue generated relative to your spa, because your spa has 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day, whatever, and you have a staff of X amount, and you can only do so many lash sessions in a day. But your online store can become, oh, I don't know, the next Revlon that gets bought by Olay for 10 billion or whatever, or 100 billion or whatever. So I'm assuming you're happy you did the work to make that happen, is my guess. Yeah.
And to be honest, I'm glad we did it when we did it, because it was before, it was 20, oh my gosh, this is bad. 2018, I think it was 2019 when we had launched Muskoka Beauty, but it was like such a long process. It probably feels like it's been longer than that, to be honest. But it was one of those things where we were carrying other products at the spa. We always made sure we had 50% margins when we were selling that product, just so we knew, okay, when we're selling this, we're making this much. For bookkeeping purposes and for keeping track of sales, it made it life so much easier as a spa owner. I'm sure everyone can agree to that. And when I was looking at 50%, I'm like, okay, we're selling quite a bit of product. We actually did really well selling the specific skincare line out of our spa, and we still have it. We love it. We use it for our facials and such, but we were selling someone else's product. And I was like, why are we doing this? Like, I still have it in my spa, but I was like, why are we selling another lash line when I can carry that lash line? Skincare, that's a whole other industry. Like, skincare is, maybe one day, I'm not gonna say never, one day I might get into skincare, but right now we're focusing more on lashes, brows, that more industry based. And I just realized, I was like, with the spa being closed, so we lost over 90% of our revenue with the spa being closed for 3.5 months here in Muskoka, and we were fine. I look at my year end now and I'm like, wow, we didn't work for 3.5 months. And we pretty much made the exact same numbers with the spa alone. And that was just with our e-commerce stores. That's not even Muskoka Beauty. That was just with Muskoka Aesthetics. And I was like, why the heck are we working so hard? Like, right? So there was so many realizations. And to be honest, with the pandemic, it made us, I think as entrepreneurs, we're go, go, go. We didn't get to sit back and really think, wait a minute, what's working in my business and what isn't?
So I think here's my closing thought, and tell me if you agree or disagree. Because I think the challenge a lot of people have is there's too many options of where to start, things you could do, ways to spend your time, things to give attention to, et cetera, that it's overwhelming, and ultimately it produces analysis paralysis, or paralysis via analysis, hyper analysis. So the theme that I'm hearing in your message, your story, is it's really twofold. And tell me if you disagree. So this is Austin's closing advice, his unsolicited advice for the listeners if they want to listen, and then you can wrap up with some closing pro tips on your end. So the theme that I've heard from you this entire show has been twofold: grit, threefold. I lied. Grit, focus, and choosing a damn niche. So you were candid and said, listen, I didn't try to become the next Neutrogena skincare brand with products that fall under a domain that may extend beyond my circle of competency. Because I'm assuming with skincare, there's a lot more chemistry involved. And it's like, let me just do lashes because that's what I'm interested in, that I'm passionate about it, whatever. So grit, focus, and passion, or I'm sorry, choosing your niche. I lied. There's 3. So how would you leave the listeners today as far as pro tips for those that are, and let's narrow it down to those that are looking to get into the retail side of things and maybe launch their own product line as well. So what would you leave them as, let's say, pro advice, pro tips, closing notes before we wrap here today?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I could look back, I don't like to think too far back, but when I think back of when we launched our product line, now looking at the way the world is, we just launched our first lash serum and brow serum. And I feel like we should have launched that a long time ago because we can retail that to anybody. It's not just for wholesalers, for lash industry based people or lash owners or lash business owners. It's something we can retail to everyone. So finding a product, it can be one product. It doesn't have to be a product line. And one specific product, obviously you have to make sure the quality is there. So really make sure you're not going, oh, I'm going to launch this whole line and then not have that quality. So quality over quantity is definitely one of my top tips I would recommend to people. And make sure that it's something that you're passionate about, something you're going to use every day, something that you can talk to your best friends or call your mom and say you're excited about it, because someone else is going to feel the same way. And think about the brand. What is the story behind the brand? Why are you doing it? I think as entrepreneurs, we always look at our why. Why are we entrepreneurs, right? And usually there's a problem and we're wanting to solve it. That is in the gist and the summary of why we're normally entrepreneurs. And the product in itself, yes, the niche is very, very important because like you said, you don't want to be in skincare and then you don't want to be in foot care and then be like, as an esthetician, yes, I can do head to toe treatments, but you usually are really passionate about one of those specific things. And for me, it was always eyelash extensions, and eyelash extensions is just starting. We're in the early stages of it, even with brow laminations and eyebrows. Like, yeah, we've waxed eyebrows for probably 100 years or whatever now, but it's like one of those things where this is just starting. The beauty industry and the e-commerce is just starting. And we advertise that we're like the Amazon of the lash industry because we can ship it and it's there at your door the next day. And we take pride in that because as a business owner, yeah, we've got connections.
That's incredible. My God, that's a feat.
And as a business owner myself, that was something where I loved that I have the background being a spa owner, because I see the importance of why the margins need to be good for those spa owners bringing in that product. Why limit having it to be sold on their online stores, having the education for their staff members, being very open to your business and kind of being that sounding board for the entrepreneurs and building that community around the business as well, for people to come in and be part of our Facebook pages, being part of our education, our wholesale. And we go to a lot of the international shows here in Canada, and I love meeting people online. Or like in person that I've met online. I'm like, oh, what's your Instagram handle? Like, what is who are you? So it's kind of fun to have that whole, it just really figure out your why. I can't stress that enough, because you want it to be something that's going to last a lifetime. You want to make sure when people think of that product that they know the founder's story, they know why they started that business, and why it's going to be important to them as the consumer.
She who knows her why can weather any how. Pro tips brought to you by a very, very dead philosopher from the 18th century or 19th, whatever. Nietzsche. Lovely. Amazing. Well, I think listeners, I'll leave you with another bonus pro tip that I stole from Noah Kagan, the CEO of AppSumo. He runs OKDork. He's an e-comm guy. Bit of a genius, a mad genius in his own right. But if you're struggling to find a problem to solve your own problem. So what are you struggling with? Hey, my deodorant sucks. Well, then make a new deodorant. Solve your own problem. Anyway, listeners, I'll leave you with that. And more importantly, Nicole, where can our beautiful audience connect with you if they're looking to scoop up some products or come out on a snowmobile and trek up to the North Pole to visit you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my personal page is Nick Manion, and then our spa is Muskoka Aesthetics. And then our product line is Muskoka Beauty. And if you even go to my personal page, they're all linked there. So it makes it extremely easy. And then we actually just launched our own podcast as well, which is Beauty Behind the Brand. We're just starting. So it's a passion project. I feel like as I've been sitting here bored in quarantine, I had to talk to somebody. So that's how that all started.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for stopping by, listeners. I don't usually say go buy someone's stuff, but I'm going to hint at you to do so because Nicole's lines are fabulous. I've never tried them, so don't listen to me. But from what I can see, it looks amazing. And maybe I'll buy my girlfriend some stuff. Who knows? Anyway, that's it. That's a wrap for this episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for having me.